Welcome to the TCF Introduction video series. In this episode, we'll look at the essential tools the Transparency and Consent Framework, TCF, provides, the Global Vendor List and TC String. As a quick recap, the TCF is an industry-wide initiative developed by IAB Europe to standardize user consent procedures under privacy regulations like the GDPR. The TCF builds up a standard with 3 steps. We focus on the first 2 steps in this episode. Firms face challenges when trying to specify the purposes for personal data processing, as the GDPR does not provide precise definitions of what constitutes a specified, explicit, and legitimate purpose. As a result, a firm may find it difficult to specify purposes that are GDPR compliant under the interpretations of all parties. Additionally, it can be challenging to match a firm's own purposes with those of other firms when transferring data. To overcome these challenges, the TCF proposes a set of 10 predefined purposes in its version 2.0. This table contains the purposes. Some purposes relate to advertisements, and some relate to the content. Moreover, the purpose specification structures for advertisement and for content are similar. But who can use these specifications? What counts as participating in the TCF? The procedure differs for groups of firms. To participate in the TCF, ad tech vendors must meet specific criteria, including maintaining a sufficient reputation, paying an annual fee, and disclosing personal data processing information to IAB Europe, such as which purposes mentioned earlier to pursue. Then, IAB Europe verifies the application. If accepted, IAB Europe adds the vendor to the Global Vendor List. The Global Vendor List contains TCF-registered vendors and the respective purposes each vendor pursues. The list is publicly available and updated weekly. This table is an example of the information available from the GVL. You can see the vendor ID, vendor name, the purposes this vendor pursues, the privacy policy URL, and much more. The procedure for consent management platforms, CMPs, to participate in TCF mirrors that of ad tech vendors. There's also a list of the TCF-registered CMPs. Publishers need to use a TCF-registered CMP and work with ad tech vendors from the Global Vendor List. Another tool the TCF develops is the Transparency and Consent String. In short, the TC String. It is an encoded character string. This figure is an example of how it looks like. The information of user consent, yes or no, for each purpose and each vendor is encoded. In the end, the orange square shows the consent string payload. TC string captures and stores all about a user's consent decisions. And it can only be created and updated by TCF-registered CMPs. Then, firms can transmit consent with the TC string. This figure illustrates a network of the online advertising industry. There are many firms, and they form a complicated network. The consent string payload is appended to every ad request that flows in the network. Under the TCF, all firms share a unified method to encode and decode the TC string. The method is space-efficient, so it's easy to transmit. With the common encoding language, every firm can now understand who gets user consent for which purpose. User data only goes to the green players who receive user consent. This episode only scratches the surface of the TCF's predefined purposes. The TCF also has specifications for special purposes and features and rules for different legal bases. Our book delves deeper into these topics, and in the next episode of our video series, we'll introduce the TCF's standardized procedure, the third step of the framework. Thank you for watching.